Media by the People presents.
Welcome to the I Love Wine and Dogs podcast.
Hosted by Heidi Huebner and Timothy Coleman.
With special guests, Ken Miller and Melissa Yee.
Welcome to the I Love Wine and Dogs podcast, created, produced, and hosted by Heidi Huebner, with engineering and production by Timothy Stonedancer Coleman. This show was created to celebrate good wine, amazing pets, and people from around the world who are doing great things in their local communities.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the I Love Wine and Dogs podcast. I am Timothy Stonedancer Coleman, way over here in the Bronx. And without any further ado, I want to introduce you, if you haven't seen us before, and throw some arms open for my sister, the creator, producer, and host of our show, Miss Heidi Huebner. How's it going, sister?
It's going great. That's like hearts to everybody. Things are awesome. I'm so excited to be talking to our guests today, Melissa and Ken from Horizon Winery. I'm going to get into like how I met them and how this friendship and falling in love with their wines started. But I want to first, I'm just going to show. So when I was there, this was the Grenache. And it has been very hard to not open this. And then in the tasting room, and this is cold, I took it out because I've been chilling and waiting. So this is the Sauvignon Blanc, which when I met Melissa and we were talking about it, I'm normally not a Sauv Blanc girl, but this is amazing. And so I'm actually going to be sharing this with some of my girlfriends for my Women Who Wine. Those are the two bottles that I bought from the tasting. And without further ado, let's welcome Ken and Melissa to the show.
Hi.
Howdy.
Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you. We're excited to be here.
So before we get into it, I think that Sage, I think their dog, Melissa, is he by you? We're going to have to do a show because it's I Love Wine and Dogs, and we love when our guests have their dogs.
100%. Oh, my God.
There she is.
Hi,
Beautiful.
Say hi. Oh, she wants the book. We have to bribe our children.
It's the same everywhere. It's the same all over.
We just had to make sure we got her on camera so we didn't forget because she's so gorgeous. Now, does she go to work with you guys a lot?
Absolutely. We just did a private tasting with her today in the tasting room, and she was my tag along looking at irrigation this morning in the vineyard.
I love it. I love it. She feels very important.
She is, and she's very helpful. She's also helping us eliminate some of the rodent issues we can have in the vineyard as well. So she's beautiful and is actually contributing to the health of the vineyard.
Well, you know, dogs like to have jobs, so that's a good thing. So Keith is your uncle, Ken?
That's right.
Okay, so I met Keith at Gelson's, and he is a wine aficionado, connoisseur, sommelier. He knows so much about wine. He's been on our show for our Wine Down Wednesdays as our wine expert. And so he was telling me that his nephew was starting, they were going to have a tasting room in Los Olivos. And I was like, I go by there all the time. I can't wait. So he was showing pictures of like where they were in the construction and everything. And so Stephen and I were coming back from being up north. And I text him, I'm like, are they open? What is their number? We're going through. And they were. And so we stopped in with our dogs and it was so much fun. So take us through the journey. How did you guys get together? How did you start this? How did you come up with all of it? Because it's so cool.
Ooh, it goes back a ways, and I would say it was a slow burn, like a lot of, new businesses and endeavors are. But in a funny way, it sort of begins with Keith, with my uncle. So I'm a kid, and my dad and his two younger brothers, of which Keith is one of them, are opening up these amazing bottles of wine at, Thanksgiving, and these old dusty bottles, and they're fascinated by them. I'm, 8 years old, probably shouldn't care, but for whatever reason I do. So and then as I got a little older, I'd get a little splash and a little taste and a little bigger pour, and just became super interested in wine at a young age. And so I would definitely attribute a fair amount of that back to him. And then Melissa and I meet kind of over a dozen years ago. And by then, I've got a little collection going, and she starts getting really into wine, and we're getting into it together, making, what starts out as a couple of trips a year to Santa Ynez Valley, which then becomes like 3, 4, 5 trips a year, which then, sort of evolves into, hey, should we maybe buy something up there? And we quickly decided yes. And the one sort of consideration in that was we wanted to buy a piece of property where we could potentially plant a small vineyard, not really even knowing what that meant yet. And we bought something 7 months later, planted a small vineyard 6 months after that. And the more we learned, the more we got into it, the more we talked to people, the more we were just hooked that this was something we really wanted to do. And it fed into something she and I had talked about for years, which was starting a project together that belonged to the two of us, that was sort of part art, part science, and part, bettering the community in some way. And so it just very much then took off from there.
Yeah, it was funny. When we met almost 12 years ago now, we immediately bonded and fell in love over purpose-driven organizations. And at the time, we were each consulting for different companies. We actually met at a Bitcoin startup in Venice, and we quickly fell in love over the idea that one day we'd start something that was our own, similarly purpose-driven, but something that would really feed us as well. We had no idea it would become this until it really did. And now it's like we chased this dream and we got it.
I love hearing how someone condenses an entire lifetime into just a couple of minutes. Like, there's so much work that it sounds like went into all of the phases of what you do. But I just want to say, one of the things that I'm hearing is purpose driven. And the image that came to me when you just said that was that it was like a crochet. It was like you guys were kind of woven together. It's like you figured out a way to love each other, but then also still amplify what is really on the inside of you. So it looks like you're two individual people, but like still intertwined. I don't know, the image that you're giving me, that's really amazing.
No, thank you. I appreciate you saying that. We appreciate you saying that. I think that's spot on. And I think Melissa and I are both people who have just really cared about how we're presenting ourselves in the community, how we're showing up, how we're interacting. And the opportunity that we would often kick around was we wanted to do that in our professional lives back then. But if there was an opportunity to do that together in something that was our venture, that was the next level. And so it was definitely this fabric that sort of slowly got woven together that was born out of just, I think, components and traits that were really important to us.
Well, and creating that as a couple, that is not a common thing that happens. Normally it's, supporting somebody in their career while you're not really doing something with yours, or you're completely two different directions and, opposite schedules if you have kids and, when you're working. And so the fact, again, that this passion of a purpose came together and you guys did that together is really cool. And then something fun that can be shared with everybody. You're not sitting at home on a computer creating code for some, whatever. You're creating a product that's delicious and fun and social.
Thank you so much. We get asked a lot in the tasting room, you guys are around each other a lot. Is that a lot? We love it. We're busy, right? We're working 7 days a week right now, but being together and doing this together actually just feeds into that. We work incredibly well together, but then when we're also having folks like you who come in and tell us how delicious the wine is, how great the experience is, it's just motivating for us to, right, then show up even more, do an even better job.
Exactly. I mean, we've worked together pretty much since the beginning, and it's true, it's not for the faint of heart, but Ken has this great tattoo that says, if it were easy, everyone would do it. And in some ways, it's funny. We don't often choose the easy way, but we choose the ways that resonate the most with us.
We'll be right back after these messages.
Watch season 1 of I Love Wine and Dogs on Spotify.
Wherever you live, go to your local shelter or work with your local rescue group to bring in your new forever loving baby if you're ready. Remember, you got to make sure you're ready for this commitment, but you can foster, you can volunteer. There are so many other ways that you can give back and help your fellow community in the pet world.
Like, share, and subscribe on Facebook and Instagram at I Love Wine and Dogs.
Look at you in our logo. You have squashed all your FOMO. We see you and we like it.
Welcome back to the show.
It would be easy to be like, just throw your name on a bottle that somebody else is somewhere else doing all the work. But you guys are kicking it.
Yeah, and we couldn't do it either without our amazing team. We have an incredible winemaker that Ken immediately resonated with, Fidencio Flores, who's fifth generation Mexican farmer. We work with him, his father, his grandfather, third generation wine growers here. And you know, it isn't easy, but when all of us do it together, it goes the way it's supposed to.
So how many people work with you then? Besides, what does the day-to-day operation look like on the ranch, in the field, the grapes?
Sure. That's, well, we mentioned Fidencio. He's our winemaker and vineyard manager. He oversees the operations in the vineyard and the winery, and it's a really tight collaboration between Ken, Fidencio, and me, and then closely supported by his grandfather and his father, who are the leaders of his team as well. And so a typical day, a vineyard's really cyclical, and so is a winery. So there's not really the same day to day, but depending on what's happening in the vineyard, just being 2 of us or 3 of us, that's not enough to really maintain a 5-acre vineyard. And so we'll have a team. Fidencio employs a lot of family and just local people who continue to come back. So typically for us, it's the same 3 or 4 people. When, for example, early in the season, we need to be pruned, we'll have 3 people there for actually it's Grandpa for the pruning, but then he'll be here. Grandpa and I will prune for maybe 4 days at a time over a couple weeks. But if it's something like shoot thinning, which is more of like a heavy operation, we'll have the team of 4 come in and they'll be there every day for a week. Same thing for weed whacking. And then day to day in the vineyard, similar, cyclical. It's pretty quiet unless something needs to happen. We don't really want to disturb the wine too much. And so if there's racking to be done, then we have a team in the winery and they'll come and do that. Strategically, Ken and Fidi and I will talk about the direction of the wines and what it is we want to make or buy or how to grow it stylistically. And then all the back.
Like, that sounds like building a car. Like, there's so many pieces to it. Oh my gosh.
Right.
There's a lot of pieces to it, and it's a year-round proposition, right? And so if you're not as familiar with running a winery or vineyard, the inclination is, there's harvest and a lot happens in the fall, and then that's the big bang. And the reality is, right, to Melissa's point, there's a lot going on the rest of the year, and there's pruning, and there's maintenance in the vineyard, and there's checking in on the vines, and then there's a lot of work in the winery, right? And we're checking in on the wines and making sure they're progressing the way we want. And sometimes they move to a new vessel, and so there's decisions around that. And so it's a 12-month cycle where and especially when there's different vintages at work, right? So we're now in the full throes of it, where we've got fruit that's growing out on the vineyard right now that we're excited about for 2026. There's fruit that we just harvested in 2025 that recently fermented and is now doing its thing. There's other fruit that's been aging for a year, 2 years, 2 years plus that we're getting ready to bottle. And then there's fruit that we have bottled that you came in, Heidi, and tasted that we're now selling, right? And so each of those cohorts are kind of at their own different spot in terms of the time and attention they need from Melissa and Fidencio and myself.
It's a lot. I mean, you have to love to do this. It really is a passion and a lifestyle. I mean, otherwise it's just somebody else doing it and it doesn't have the love and care. Like when I was doing the tasting and I've been to other tasting rooms, but Melissa was so passionate and so informative and really educating. And then I would ask a question and I love that. Like, it's not, oh, and this da da da, and it has a little bit fruit forward and it goes great with the steak. Like, she was really talking about the wine. And I was like, oh yeah, that's what interests me. Because I think it's fascinating.
You definitely got the upgraded version when you came in. So I'm glad you got Melissa and not me, because she's the star of the tasting room.
It kind of,
But,
yeah.
But I know, in all seriousness, we do appreciate you saying that, because we're walking the vineyard every day, right? We're thinking about how an individual vine's doing, and is it behaving the way we expected? And so we like to think that comes through in how we interact with people when they come into.
So I'm curious, like, what does date night look like? I mean, what you just explained to me sounds like there need to be more days in a week, but like, what do you do to like just shake it all off and remove yourself from everything? Or are you even able to like fully remove yourself from everything that's happening for a period of time?
Should we talk about Saturdays?
One of our want to know.
Yeah. We're so on our off time, honestly, to balance all of this. We love to veg out together. I guess that's not surprising, but Saturday nights, like we have on the sign on the door, it says we open 12 to 5-ish. We just keep the doors open as long as the vibes are good. So typically on a Saturday, we won't be leaving until 8:30. 8 if we're lucky. And so our ritual has become on Saturday nights, we go to a local restaurant, Maddie's Tavern. We get a smash burger and fries to go. And it's such a high point of our week. We just come home, we eat that together, we veg out on the couch. We sort of think about, at Saturday, it's like the liveliest day, but maybe sort of just past the midpoint of the week, we can think about our week and what's coming. And we really love nights like that.
I completely agree. I would say, Tim, the other sort of answer to your question is, having just opened a tasting room at the center of town in Los Olivos 4 months ago, not a lot of true peer date nights like this so far, 4 months in, compared to past years. But we knew what we were signing up for. That's okay. And so, like Melissa said, we take these little moments and turn that into a date night, when we can just get a little bit of time together. And we know, down the road we'll return to more official date nights, vacations, those sorts of things.
I love it. That's one of the great things about being your own boss. So guys, we're going to take a quick break and hear from one of our sponsors. So we'll be right back with Ken and Melissa.
We'll be right back after these messages. ilovewineanddogs.shop, your one-stop shop to support loving pets, good wine, and great people doing awesome things in their communities. Welcome back to the show.
Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for being with us today. We are here speaking with Ken and Melissa, and they've been giving us, the rundown on what it takes to masterfully create this delicious wine that they're producing. And they've been talking about all of the families and generations from Horizon, yes, that they employ as a part of this huge movement to bring everything to your local stores, where we just kind of walk through and say, okay, I'll try this today, right? So my question, Ken and Melissa, is, for someone who is not connected to winemaking, but has maybe a desire or a vision to become involved in that particular industry, what does step one look like? Like, how do you get into something that seems, to the outside person, it feels like that's a really hard thing to do and to break into?
That is a great question. And we get that a fair amount in the tasting room, I've noticed, even early in, questions around, wow, you and Melissa really followed your dreams. That's amazing. How did you get from, we like to have a bottle at home, to, oh, we have a winery now and a tasting room? And I think we both went into this very humble. So we were eager, once we got really interested and we bought the ranch and we started to plant, we got very energized and wanted to move quickly. But we also were at least self-aware enough to know there was so much we didn't know. And so Melissa and I are both very inquisitive people. We like to learn. Melissa used to teach high school math, right? She comes by it honestly in terms of being in that sort of environment of teaching and learning. And so I think we were both wise early on to say, sure, it's one thing to see wine being made in a harvest time in a movie, but what's it really like when you get into it? And so we did a really good job of, one, finding expertise who had knowledge and background and experience and arrows in the back that we didn't have that could help guide us. But then also just talking to people, spending time with people, reading voraciously. When you peek around the corner, what are some of the challenges and issues you're going to run into? And when the honeymoon's over, right, and you're now running a full business, is it still fun? Is it still exciting? And so I feel like we did a really good job of easing our way into that and learning and surrounding ourselves with the right people, while also recognizing it's a slow burn process, right? And so not waiting too long, right? You buy property, you plant a vineyard, it takes 3, 4, 5 years for that to produce, then it ages for a couple of years in the bottle, and it's 5, 6, 7 years before you're ever pouring a wine that you're having, let alone other people. And so I think we did a pretty good job of how do we get going on that? Well, also, how do we learn from people who have come before us?
Yeah, and one incredible resource too for anyone just wanting to get into it and maybe not lucky enough, like we were so fortunate to have a very welcoming community, is to figure out like what sources of education you have that are community based. Like early on, I was looking and found a program at Hancock Community College in Santa Maria, and they have a bonded winery. And it's through there I've found so many mentors. I knew I wanted to work with our team, and Ken and I both wanted to be very involved. But we also didn't want to be dead weight. They're experts and we're not. We don't ever want to get in their way. We always want to be adding value. So to be able to first dig deep ourselves, Ken through self-study and just so much life experience, and me through actually taking structured courses in, like, not the sexy ones, but the useful ones, like vineyard operations, viticulture, winemaking operations, that let us then get the expertise we needed to become more creative and more collaborative with our team. And also to find experts to help us. I'm able to run our own labs and now run labs for our winemaker to help him because of a class I took at Hancock, and lots of lessons learned from mentors there too, teachers who've become friends, and then classmates who have also gone on to make wine. And so there's just so many ways that we've received support, and also, like Ken says, taking it slow and humble and really making sure that we're listening to the people who know what they're doing.
So you said it was about 7 years before you're pouring, before you guys had your tasting room when you were bottling. Where were you selling the wines? Where could, before what you have now, where were people finding those?
It was primarily a small wine club, small wine membership, as well as a little bit of e-commerce sales, and then a couple of restaurants we were in. But we're a small producer. We're a small boutique producer. We knew we wanted to have a tasting room in town. We ended up picking one right at the center of town, as you saw, Heidi. That is right, quite busy when you get there. So we also kind of wanted to build up our inventory a little bit too, to make sure that we had enough to support a space like that. And so we were not eagerly selling a lot of the wine at first. We were actually kind of hanging on to it. Because even after you age it in the barrel, you also many times want to give it some bottle age as well. And so we had the benefit of letting some of these wines age in the bottle while also building up a little bit of a stash that put us then in a good spot for when the tasting room was actually open.
When you were starting to plant the wines, so how many, you have the Rosé, the Sauv Blanc, the Grenache, and there's a couple more.
Melissa and I were particularly interested in making blends when we first planted the vineyard. Not that we weren't going to make single varietal wines, but we were also really interested in making blends. We love Southern Rhone wines, Châteauneuf-du-Pape and Gigondas, and those are all blends, right? And they're Rhone-based blends, and we had planted mostly Rhone varietals. And so even though we're only planting 5 acres, we planted 9 varietals, which that was maybe one spot where we veered off a little bit from what the advice might have been, but it was because we wanted the composition of those blends to all come from the estate vineyard. And now we've started to supplement that, where we are now also making wines from other vineyards as well. And so the end sort of portfolio, if you will, or lineup as it stands today, is there is a Rosé, a Sauvignon Blanc, a Roussanne, all from the estate. We're getting ready to bottle our first ever Viognier next month, which we're very excited about. And then there's Grenache, Syrah, in terms of single varietals, 100% Cabernet that we're bottling next month as well. And then multiple blends that are kind of makeup, that are comprised of some of those varietals as well. So we're at 10 wines, 11 wines, and more coming.
We found out too down the road that it is an old practice and an insurance policy for a small producer to plant a lot of varietals. Because if you think about it, if you're only farming 5 acres and all of it is Pinot, which is thin-skinned and, susceptible to things like mold, mildew, fungus, frost, and you get a really bad frost and you don't have any of the hardier varietals, you're up the creek if you lost everything, or if there's a disease that hits certain varietals worse. And so because we haven't planted too much of a preponderance of any one varietal to our vineyard, we're kind of safe if one varietal or 2 varietals don't do well. I'd like to say we did that ahead of the game thinking of that, but it just happened to be like a happy turn of events that I learned about later and that we're happy about now.
It depends also on the region and the soil and climate as well of what grapes take and do well in certain areas. Am I correct in saying that, kind of?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just a science. Like I said, I'm just fascinated with all of it. I think it's so cool.
And that was a lot of our learning experience and initial conversations when we were deciding to plant is, here's the pool of varietals we're potentially interested in. Now, let's marry that up together with, is it warmer where we are or cooler where we are? What's the soil like? Is the certain varietals prefer western-facing warm afternoon sun, and other varietals prefer a softer eastern-facing morning sun? And how's the wind coming through the property? Because some grapes love to cool down in the afternoon, and others will experience heavy-duty shatter, because of the wind. And so how do you, it becomes a game of Tetris of what are the varietals you want to plant and will they do well given those sort of different dimensions and characteristics?
That's insane.
Totally. Things will happen that we couldn't have even foreseen. Like we took a risk planting Roussanne to the best block in the vineyard. And Ken will tell you, it's a fickle grape, but we planted it to the best east-facing slope on the advice of Fidencio, who knew it would thrive. But we lost 2 of the 5 vintages, not because the fruit didn't do well, not because the vines weren't happy, but the first one was to bees. And we had to think really fast and get bee netting, but that wasn't fast enough. And in the Viognier, we got our first really great full vintage, and it was planted to a really beautiful, steep, well-draining slope, but it turned out that slope was really exposed to wind. And so a lot of the traditional ways to prune that vine still left at bloom time too exposed to the wind, and so the fruit wouldn't set. So Fidencio's grandfather, with his 40 plus years of pruning experience, came up with this sort of hybrid way of pruning that brought together 2 different types that would provide more structural protection from the wind. And after he pruned it that way, we got our first really big harvest. And even the professor that I work with at school is like, yeah, that's a great solution. And that was really creative. I haven't really seen that done very much.
Being able to pivot, right? Being able to pivot and keep the vision moving forward. That is the purest definition of tap dancing. You've got people that are pouring as much love into this as the 2 of you are, which is probably why it tastes so great. Back to Heidi's other point.
Thank you. It's not lost on us that this team we've assembled treats our vineyard as though it's their own, and we think of it as though it's their vineyard as well. And so we've had multiple instances where we need to deal with something quickly, and it's Saturday at 7 p.m. and they were enjoying time with their families and well-earned break from the week. And 20 minutes later, they're, pulling together trucks and coming over and helping deal with something. And that's one minor example of many instances of that sort of thing happening that is not lost on us, that the end product we're making is because of the commitment we get from the team, the commitment from Melissa and I, from Fidencio, and that sort of combined effort and approach and care for each other as well.
It's really a small family. You guys, you're the community of your workers. It's a small family, and I think that that's lovely. I think is another reason why you're successful. It's people
Thank
who
you.
care. Not just, oh, this person was great in an interview and they came from this huge winery, and it's people who live there and love it and just makes it special.
Right. And we've always been
Makes
all
it
about too
special.
that. Exactly. It makes it special that so many people touch it, and that we give credit to the people who are on the ground too. I mean, we do a lot of work. Ken hand labels and hand numbers probably 90% of these bottles that we have so far. And no one sees that. And day to day in the vineyard, the hours that the team is in the sun, the Saturday they could have said, no, we'll see you on Monday, but they show up instead. That's the story we want to tell too.
Which I think is so great. So everybody, we're going to take a break. We have one more commercial from our sponsor and then more from Horizon with Ken and Melissa. We'll be right back.
We'll be right back after these messages. I Love Wine and Dogs podcast has brand new merchandise. Have you ever looked at something and realized you didn't need it until you saw it? I Love wineanddogs.shop, your one-stop shop to support loving pets, good wine, and great people doing awesome things in their communities. Visit ilovewineanddogs.shop and get that new merch. Welcome back to the show.
Hey everybody, thanks so much for coming back and for staying with us. This is the I Love Wine and Dogs podcast, and we've been talking about Horizon and the phenomenal work that they're doing with all of the different varieties of wine that they have, with more to come. And we're here with Melissa and Ken. So Heidi, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Well, so I wanted to follow up when you were saying how Ken does the labeling. Who came up with the logo and the artwork? I love the colors on the bottles. So I need to know what that story is, please.
That's our friend Graham Bradley from A+ Type. He's a designer out of Berkeley. And Ken and I had long loved the design and typography of a local restaurant, Bar La Côte. And when it came time to make our labels, we basically hunted him down and cold emailed him and asked him if he'd be interested in a small project doing wine labels. And we pretty much promised him it would be fun. And it turned out to be just the right timing. He was just coming off paternity leave. And it's just been another really fun collaboration. Ken actually mocked up the original design on that. And then he handed it over to Graham. And we so loved the way that Graham expresses himself in digital imagery and typography. We simply asked that, like, hey, we love the idea of having it be an object of beauty, art, but also vintage. We'd love to have the wine stats on the back and have them be like a vintage train ticket. So Ken with the mock-up on the front and myself with the sort of train ticket examples on the back, and gave him the character of each wine, gave him the wines to taste, and let him have at it. And he just blew us away. He built 3D models. He actually simulated light on moons and planets. And he came up with these, if you look at that label, he came up with this beautiful, almost vintage photograph painting application on the front where you even see light leaks, there's a little ribbon of like violet on the bottom of that grape.
And Heidi, just to clarify, Melissa's giving me credit when she says mock-up. I have zero artistic talent whatsoever. My stick figures are offensive. Like, they're just not good. And so I did come up with the moon phase idea, which I am proud of, but I did it in PowerPoint, and it was very like, almost with like Harvey balls. Like, it was very like, kind of linear but it got the point across. And then we put it in the hands of Graham, who actually turned it into this beautiful expression.
Well, and I love the back of it. So this is bottle 191. So did you actually, it looks like you wrote that in there. I love it.
Did. The irony with that being that Melissa's handwriting is a million times better than mine. And mine looks like a doctor who's sick if you can imagine. Like, it's really bad. And so, but the way things have worked out, I often do a large bulk of the numbering. And so I've had to get this whole process down where it has to be this very specific pin. I have to hold the bottle a certain way. I have to position my arm a certain way. And if I do all those things, then I'm actually reasonably okay with the numbering that comes out.
I just think that's a fun fact. Like, because I was looking at that and I'm like, yeah, that's handwritten.
Totally.
Labor of love. Everything is going to guide you. We talk about this and exactly what you say, and with other guests, it's like, it's all going to unfold as it's supposed to, right?
Absolutely. Yes. All of that. And, just to value these, it's the name of our current tasting menu, but these third spaces that bring people together away from home, away from work, a community space where people can just bond over something that's objectively beautiful and start building bridges back to each other. Especially after COVID, people have become so distanced and at times so polarized. It's like, if we can make more of these little spots on the corner and seek them out, make them welcoming, then I think there will be some really wonderful changes about. In addition to that, one other thing we'd love people to think about is to really get curious about how your wines are made, to look into more than just the label and how it tastes, but to think about, who is the winemaker? Who is the team? How are these farmed? How might they be treating their people? What is their vision? And sort of connect with those things too.
Just that authentic approach to what you do, right? I mean, you guys, it's almost like if there's a takeaway from this, for me, it's like Horizon Wines, like vision, love, and purpose. You're so real that I don't believe there could come a time when you would be fake in the way that you present this to the world. You're so real and so immersed in what you're doing that it already sounds different than other wines that I would even go and think about and pick up. You're giving people a real experience.
That keeps us going.
And it is, the tasting room, it's beautiful, but it's comfortable. Like, where we were sitting, I felt like I was kind of in their living room. Like, in a portion of the couch was comfortable. The dogs were, laying down. They were comfortable. They had a water bowl, and I felt like we were just visiting, and then people would come in and, oh, your dogs are cute, and would start talking. And it's very social, but, inviting. It's very inviting. And that's what I loved about it. Oh, I feel like I've known you guys the first time I met you, and that's a great feeling because, we need more of that in this world, right? There's so much disconnect. So, I know, the success is going to continue for you both.
I pray continued blessings on what you guys are doing. I feel so connected to you, even though I'm all the way over here in the Bronx. What you have shared and the story behind the product is so important and it's so rich. There's so many layers to what you guys have said. So I can't wait to read your books. I can't wait until Melissa starts doing online classes and teaching this to the world about how to just take your vision and put it in practice. It's going to be really exciting. So congratulations to both of you.
I was so excited to get you guys on here. So listen, everybody, remember, adopt, don't shop. We've got so many animals in the shelters right now. It's kitten season, puppy season. They're bursting at the seams. So if you can open up your heart and your home to a furry friend, we ask you to do that. And again, just make it a great day, and cheers. And thank you so much to Ken and Melissa and Tim. Thank you. Love everybody.
Find us online at mediabythepeople.com and follow us on socials at Media by the People.